Welcome to the Cheeky Chicken Podcast. My name is Erica, and I'm not a veterinarian. I'm just a poultry keeper. I've learned a lot through a lot of early mornings and muddy boots what it takes to keep a flock healthy and happy. This podcast is my way of passing the kindness forward of the breeders and industry experts that have helped me along the way. Whether you're brand new to chicken keeping or deep into your flock keeping, I hope that you find something useful from today that you can apply to your own flock or maybe just brings a smile to your face. If you enjoy your time here, please press subscribe, and you can also follow us over on Facebook on our page, The Cheeky Chicken Ranch. So let's get started. In today's episode 2, chick season and how to set up your brooder before the babies arrive. If you've walked into a local farm store in the last 2 weeks, you can literally hear and feel the buzz in the air of the baby chicks that have arrived. Week after week, it seems that there's more and more chicks arriving to the farm stores, and it is so exciting. But before you bring home those tiny, fluffy little bottoms, it's really important that you do a few things to ensure your success. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about brooder setup, safety, breed research, feed, water, heat, and planning their move-out timeline. So firstly, before you bring those babies home, I suggest that you have the end in mind, which that is, where are the chickens going to live after they're ready to move out of the house or out of the garage or out of the brooder, if you will. At 6 to 8 weeks, they're getting pretty big, they can fly, they're pretty stinky. So if you're keeping the baby chicks in your house, you're gonna wanna get them moved out to the barn or to the coop as soon as possible. So if you haven't planned your coop, I suggest that you listen to episode 1, Coop Basics for Beginners. That gives you some high-level information on how to plan your coop, things such as space per bird, predator proofing, where to locate your coop based on the weather in your region. So check that episode out for some information on coop planning. The next thing would be to consider what breeds of chickens you want to raise and for what purpose. I personally am very involved in the silky community, which is a bantam breed, and I also have a flock of egg-laying chickens. But of course, chickens have multiple purposes, whether you choose to raise meat birds, you want egg layers, maybe you want ornamental pet chickens, okay? So considering the breed is very important. Also, some breeds are hardier for different regions in the country, whether you're in the north and it's very cold, or you're in the south where it is more hotter in the summertime or all year long. It's important that you do some research on the breeds before you go to the store and just fill your box full of chicks. So some of the categories that I mentioned about choosing your breeds, if you wanted to focus your flock mainly on egg production, some of the common breeds are Leghorns, Isa Browns, Rhode Island Reds, Australorps, Easter Eggers, and they lay a variety of different colors from white, pink to brown, blue, and even green. Depending on what your goals are, whether you want more of a production bird or something that's going to give you that rainbow dozen, I suggest you do a little bit of research online to identify which breeds you want to focus on. Meat birds are great providers. There's certainly a lot of work and a lot of effort and have different demands when it comes to the coop and time spent outside. Cornish cross, rangers, other types of meat birds are available. There are dual purpose breeds. I've owned a few of those myself, and that means they can have the production ability for eggs or also meat bird. There's pet breeds such as Polish or Silkies, and they do lay eggs. They're smaller eggs, about 2/3 the size of a standard egg. And they're just the cutest, fluffiest little things. And of course, I'm biased for the Silkies. And then you can get involved with waterfowl or turkeys. And we're going to focus mainly today on chicks. I do not have the experience as much in the waterfowl or turkeys or peafowl. but maybe in a future episode, we'll have someone that's more of an expert on waterfowl come and talk about how to set those birds up for success. So let's get down to it and the brooder. There are a few key things that are really, really important in respect to getting your brooder set up, and some things that your brooder absolutely must provide. One is safety and security, okay? The actual container that you're using for the brooder. Now, I've seen a lot of different things used. I personally use pack and play pens, like you can find at any of the big box stores that you would buy for a baby. I like the pack and play. It has good ventilation. It's small, it's contained, it has high sides on it. But in the beginning, when I first started getting into chickens, I was using a stock tank, a 100-gallon stock tank as my brooder. Some people use totes. There's all sorts of different things that you can use. So the brooder option, identifying what you're going to use for that container for the chicks is very important. And making sure that that container you choose is safe, where there's no gaps, there's no sharp edges, there's no hazards in it, no holes, and that the space is, ample for the number of chicks that you plan to bring home, which, if you haven't heard of chicken math, that's a whole nother episode that we can talk about in itself. And then cleanliness, keeping it clean, is very important. I've also seen people use plastic kiddie pools for brooders. I mean, really, it's wide open what you want to use, but to make sure that it is safe and secure, it has a lid so that they can't fly out, is important. So next to the container itself, safety, the next thing that is extremely important is the heat. Chicks rely on heat, and there are some different sources for heat. There is the heat plate, which is my preferred method of heat for the chicks. A heat plate generally is adjustable. It needs to be raised as the chicks get larger. The chicks can scurry underneath it, kind of like getting underneath the mother hen, and they gather under there, and then when they need to cool off, they just simply exit from underneath the brooder plate. The brooder heat plate is, again, my preferred safety mechanism for heat, although a good old standard that a lot of people go by are heat lamps. Heat lamps are inexpensive, they're easy to find, but of course maintaining the safety of those is paramount. They are more at risk of fire. The heat source, in my opinion, can be more inconsistent, and if it falls, you have that risk of fire. So maintaining that heat lamp stays clean, that it stays above the chicks, and that they have the ability to move away from that heat is really important. So when you first get your chicks from the store, or maybe someone hatched them for you, it's really important that those chicks be kept at about 95 degrees. And you can get from Amazon, if you will, a small temperature humidistat that you can put in the brooder that reads the temperature at the ground level where the chicks are. So if you're using a heat lamp, really important that you make sure that you check the temperature at the ground level where the chicks are living, and that it's at that 95 to even 98 degrees. I like it a little bit warmer when they're newly hatched. And that they have the ability to move away from that heat and cool off. I hear too often where, people are asking for help, their chicks are all huddled up in a corner, or they're passing away. Sometimes chicks are really, really sensitive, and they can get too hot and overheat and expire, or conversely, they can be too cold and also pass away. So, watch the chicks. They can give you some really good physical indicators if it's too hot or too cold. If they're panting, it's too hot. If they're just sort of laying like in puddles because they're hot and they're trying to move away from the heat, and there's no shadow, no area to get away from the heat, it's really important that you provide them that ability to cool off. The next thing that I would tell you about is feed and water is important in your brooder setup and planning. In respect to feed, you want to feed a good, well-balanced chick feed. And chick feed comes in two different varieties, a medicated and a non-medicated. And you will find that the topic of medicated versus non-medicated feed is always a great controversy in all of the chicken forums. But I really think that you could just narrow it down to make your decision whether you're going to go medicated or not. And it's very simple. If you are raising your chicks and your brooder is located inside your home, away from external environmental factors where they will not be put at risk of contracting any pathogens from the dirt, the soil, other animals, then you're safe to use non-medicated. Now, if you're going to be raising your birds in a barn, on a dirt floor, in an area where there's exposure to things such as coccidia, then you want to use medicated, because the medicated will help prevent coccidiosis in a high-risk environment. And so it's really just a very simple decision in my viewpoint. I feed non-medicated. I raise my chicks in the house. Now, if I was raising them out in the barn, in the runs with the adult hens and letting them raise the chicks, then, this would be a different discussion point. You can feed them chick crumble, or you can feed it to them as a mash by adding water. I just feed them as a crumble. And, making sure that you're giving them ample amount to have free choice feed. Different breeds require different protein levels, but what I would tell you with chicks is generally a 20 to 22% protein feed is a good start. If you're raising bantam breeds, some of the more basic chick starter, I think, starts around 18% protein. Water. Now, water's not as simple as it sounds, but chicks, they need to stay hydrated. It's important to make sure that, especially when they're just a few days old, that they have access to the water. So you need to have shallow pans or shallow waters so that they have access to it. Anything that's too deep poses a risk that they could drown in it. So if your water source is a little bit on the deep side, you could add some like rocks or marbles to it. But honestly, I just buy the standard chick waters that you can find at the store. They're very shallow, and there's no risk of drowning in that. Now, in the water itself, I choose to provide the chicks additional vitamins and electrolytes and probiotics. Now, not everyone does that, and I realize when they're raised out in nature that necessarily they are not getting those additional vitamins and supplements. But inherent to the breed of chickens that I raise, they do require more supplementation. Plus, one of the things that can happen to chicks because of the variances in temperature, the stress, they can get something that's called pasty butt. And pasty butt is literally what it sounds like, but their little bottom will get covered in feces, and it sticks to their bottom. And if you don't clean that off, it can cause a stoppage, which then ultimately they will expire from that. But making sure that they have clean water that has the vitamins and electrolytes in it, I think gives them a leg up nutritionally that helps avoid the pasty butt. And also many people will swear by putting a teaspoon of ACV in the water, apple cider vinegar with the mother in the water. I do this as a practice. I personally find that it helps. Now, there are a lot of veterinarians out there that tell you, don't say the word ACV. It's an old wives' tale. But I think that the ACV does something to the pH of the water that's beneficial for the chicks. And it does, in my circumstance, really help reduce the occurrence of pasty butt. So, when you get your chicks home, keep monitoring them. Make sure that you're checking them for pasty butt. If you find that they have it, it's just a warm washcloth or a little dip in a warm teacup. You can get that right off. Now, how long do you keep the chicks in the brooder? Again, dependent upon the breed and your goals and what time of year it is, may drive how long you keep the chicks in the brooder. I currently have about 21 chicks in my pack and play brooder. They are 2 weeks old and they're starting to get big. I would love to move them out to the barn sometime soon, but it's just too cold. So the recommendation really is to wait to move your chicks out of the brooder until they're fully feathered. With your large fowl breeds, Leghorns, Easter Eggers, Isa Browns, Rhode Island Reds, Marans, typically around 4 weeks, those large fowl birds will be fully feathered. Now, in the case of some bantam breeds, I find that their feathers don't mature that quick, but they typically have enough down that if you take them out of the brooder at about 4 or 5 weeks and they still have access to supplemental heat, that they can be successful. And if you're planning on bringing chicks in the colder months of the year, you want to make sure, that the overnight temps aren't dropping too low. And when we spoke earlier about what temperature to keep your brooder at for the chicks, I mentioned that week-old chicks need to be at 95 to 98 degrees. That drops by about 5 degrees a week. So as you can see, it takes a long time for that bird to be large and mature enough before you get to a 60, 65 degree overnight. So if you're going to be moving your chicks out of the brooder as early as 4 to 6 weeks, it's important that you offer supplemental heat to them in the coop where they're going to be living. I do that using a brooder plate that extends fairly high so that they can still get under it. My silkies at 10 to 12 weeks still have access to supplemental heat plates if they wish to have it. One thing that has also worked really well for me is having an interim pen. I call it the teenager pen, and that is for that intermediate age of chick between, let's call it 8 weeks and 16 weeks old, where they're not quite the same size as the adults in the flock, a little bit smaller. I put them into that teenager area where they can all establish their flock skills and learning how to chicken and all those things, but they're not being bullied by the large adult chickens. So again, and one thing that I just tell people when I give them advice is, when do you move them into the coop with all of the other birds? If you're integrating a flock, that is I try and wait until the babies are nearly the size of the birds that they're being integrated with. That really gives you the best step up for success. But if this is your first flock and you're not integrating with any other birds, then you don't have to worry about that. And we'll talk about integrating with other birds probably in a subsequent episode, talk a little bit more in detail on how to mix flocks, how to introduce new birds, and have success with that. So, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Again, some of the things that will really bring you success with your brooder and bringing chicks home from the farm store is to make sure you really research in advance what breeds you want to raise, build a safe brooder that provides safety and security, choosing that heat source wisely and making sure that it is safe for use, safe for the environment, safe for the chicks. Prepare that feed and water for the chicks before they arrive, just really put a lot of planning into it. Will help you be successful. If you enjoyed today's episode, I hope you'll join us for a future episode. We'll be interviewing Jen from Showcase Silkies, and we'll be talking to Jen about her journey as a breeder and hatching chicks, and she'll be giving some tips on how to hatch chicks, some things that have brought her success, and also how she really focuses on health of the chicks and when it comes to growing healthy and happy chicks. And thank you again so much for joining us today. If you liked today's episode, please hit like and subscribe, and feel free to follow me over on the Cheeky Chicken page. Thanks so much, and have a great week.